What if I told you there's an intelligence that goes way beyond book smarts and people smarts? One that actually helps us tackle the biggest questions in our lives. Some folks are even calling it the ultimate intelligence. So today, let's dig in and find out why. All right, so when you think about intelligence, you probably think of a couple of main types, right? But there's a pretty strong case being made for a third, really crucial piece of the puzzle. And that's where this idea of spiritual intelligence comes in. Yeah, think about it, right? We've all heard of IQ. That's your classic book smarts. And we know about EQ, which is all about people smarts. But what about the part of us that searches for meaning? The part that craves connection and a sense of purpose? That feels like a pretty big piece of the human experience that's missing, doesn't it? Okay, so this breaks it down really nicely. You've got these three big players on the field. First, there's IQ, our cognitive intelligence. That's for logic, solving problems. Then you've got EQ, our emotional intelligence, which is all about how we navigate our social world. And then there's this new kid on the block, SI, or spiritual intelligence. And its whole game is our search for meaning and purpose. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly is spiritual intelligence? I know it sounds a little, abstract, right? But you might be surprised to learn that researchers have actually come up with a pretty clear definition. So at its heart, SI is basically our capacity to tap into our deepest values, the things that truly matter to us, and use that understanding of the big picture to get through life's challenges. And it's really important to note, this isn't necessarily about religion. It's about the inner resources we all have to find our why and to, bounce back when things get tough. And this idea it's captured so powerfully by the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. Here's a man who survived the Holocaust, and he argued that our most fundamental human drive, the thing that keeps us going, is our search for meaning. He believed that our ability to find that meaning, even in the absolute worst circumstances imaginable, is a uniquely human superpower. And that, right there, is the very heart of SI. And look, this is not some new age fad that just popped up. The idea has deep roots. We're talking over a century ago, with William James looking into the psychology of spiritual experiences. Then you have giants like Maslow and Frankl building on that foundation. The actual term spiritual intelligence was officially coined back in 2000. And more recently, guys like David B. King have taken it even further, developing actual scientific models to try and measure it. Okay, so how does this all work in practice? To make it less, out there, King's model is super helpful because it breaks SI down into four key components. Let's walk through them one by one. First up, we have critical existential thinking. This is basically your ability to think about the big questions. You know the ones. Why am I here? What's the point of it all? What's my purpose? It's that deep philosophical itch that I think we all get from time to time. Number two is personal meaning production. Now, this is a cool one. It's the ability to look at everything in your life, the good stuff, the bad stuff, even the boring everyday stuff, and weave it all together into a story that makes sense to you, a story that has a purpose. It's almost like you're creating your own personal mission statement based on your own unique experiences. Third is transcendental awareness. You know that feeling of just pure awe you get when you're looking up at a starry night sky? Or that deep sense of connection to nature or to other people or just something bigger than yourself? That's what this is. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, all part of a much bigger picture. And last but not least, number four, conscious state expansion. This is all about our ability to get into those heightened states of awareness. Think about those moments of intense focus when you're in the zone, or that feeling of deep peace you might get from meditation or prayer, or even just sitting quietly by yourself. It's about shifting your consciousness. Okay, so now this brings up a really fascinating question, maybe the elephant in the room. How on earth do you even begin to measure something that's so personal, so profound? It sounds almost impossible, right? And that's really the core challenge for the researchers in this field. How do you put a number on someone's sense of meaning? Well, believe it or not, they've developed tools to try. And what's really interesting is how different cultures approach it. So you have Western models, and they tend to focus on things like personal meaning and that existential thinking we talked about. But then you look at Indian models, which are often rooted in these ancient philosophies, and they're focused more on holistic development, ethical action, and that sense of unity. It's just a perfect example of how our culture can shape how we even think about spirituality. Okay, so we've gone through the theory, the history, the components, but let's get down to the bottom line. Why does any of this matter to you?
What's the real-world practical value of spiritual intelligence in our everyday lives?
But hold on, before we jump into all the benefits, we have to address a really important point. There's a very real debate happening in the scientific community about whether SI should even be called an intelligence in the first place. And the critics bring up some totally valid points. For one, like we just saw, the definition can be pretty different depending on the culture. It's also deeply subjective. I mean, how do you objectively measure someone else's inner world? Plus, some scientists argue it overlaps way too much with existing personality traits, like being open to new experiences, and that it just doesn't fit the classic model of intelligence, which is all about solving problems. But, and this is a really big but, here's why this whole concept is so incredibly powerful, even with that debate going on. It's this. Whatever you want to call it, the research is pretty consistent. People who score higher in these areas, they report greater psychological well-being. They're more resilient in the face of adversity, and they often make for more effective, more ethical leaders. I mean, those are real, tangible, positive outcomes you can see in the real world. So, we'll leave you with this final thought. Whether you want to call it an intelligence or a set of human skills, this capacity to search for and find meaning seems to be profoundly important. So maybe just take a second to think about it for yourself. What is that one big question that really drives you, the one that gives your life a sense of meaning?